She never wanted to be a queen. She wanted to be the queen of people's hearts, and somehow, in a world that tried to fit her into a box, she became something far more powerful, a voice for the voiceless, a woman who used her pain to heal others, and a princess who refused to stay silent when silence was exactly what the palace demanded. These are her words, and if you listen closely, they'll tell you everything about who Diana really was, not the fairytale, not the tragedy, but the woman behind both. I don't go by the rule book. I lead from the heart, not the head. This was Diana's entire philosophy, wrapped in one sentence. In a world governed by protocol, by royal procedures, by centuries of tradition telling you exactly how to sit, how to wave, how to grieve, how to exist, Diana did the one thing no one expected. She felt everything, publicly, unapologetically. She shook hands with AIDS patients when the world believed you could catch the disease through touch. She sat on the floor with landmine victims in Angola. She crouched down to speak to children at eye level, because she understood instinctively that dignity is not given, it's shown. That was leading from the heart, not a calculated PR move, not advice from a media consultant. Pure, dangerous, world-changing instinct. I think the biggest disease the world suffers from in this day and age is the disease of people feeling unloved. When Diana said this in 1995, the world was startled. Princesses didn't talk like this. They didn't diagnose humanity. They didn't speak of loneliness as though it were a pandemic. But Diana knew loneliness from the inside. She described her own experience of isolation within the palace walls, a marriage that had collapsed, a press that hunted her, a system that couldn't accommodate someone who felt too deeply. And rather than turn that pain inward, she turned it outward. She made her suffering into a searchlight, pointing it at every corner of the world where people were forgotten, the diseased and the dying, the homeless, the imprisoned. She sat with them because she understood, at a cellular level, what it meant to be invisible in a crowd. I wear my heart on my sleeve. Simple words, but in the world Diana inhabited, they were revolutionary. The royal family had an unspoken code: never complain, never explain. Emotions were private. Weakness was inadmissible. You smiled for the cameras, and you kept the rest locked behind palace gates. Diana didn't just break that rule. She shattered it. She cried in front of cameras. She spoke openly about her battles with bulimia. She admitted to self-harm. In that now legendary 1995 Panorama interview, which drew 23 million viewers in Britain alone, she looked directly into the lens and said things royals simply did not say. She spoke of a loveless marriage, of being followed and undermined, of feeling suicidal. The palace was appalled. The public was transfixed, and millions of people around the world, for the first time, saw their own pain reflected in the eyes of a princess. Wearing your heart on your sleeve, when you're Diana, is not vulnerability, it's power. I knew what my job was. It was to go out and meet the people and love them. This quote tells you something crucial about the way Diana understood her purpose. Not protocol, not duty in the dry, institutional sense. Love, that was the job, and she was extraordinarily good at it. She had a gift, what some called the Diana effect, where ordinary people, even those who'd never believed in the monarchy, found themselves moved to tears at her funeral. Not because she was famous, because they genuinely felt, many of them, that she had somehow seen them, that her care extended beyond the photo opportunity, beyond the carefully arranged visit, into something that felt real. And it was real. That's what made it different. Diana didn't love people as a performance. She loved them as a compulsion. She couldn't help it. And that, ultimately, is what made her unrepeatable. Every one of us needs to show how much we care for each other and, in the process, care for ourselves. This is the Diana quote that gets least attention, and it might be the most sophisticated thing she ever said publicly. She understood the link, one that modern psychology has spent decades confirming, between compassion outward and healing inward. She wasn't advocating selflessness to the point of self-erasure. She was saying, the act of caring, the practice of showing up for others, is also how you save yourself. Diana lived this. She channeled her grief into charity work. She turned her eating disorder into a platform for honesty about mental health. She transformed her failed marriage, perhaps the most watched marriage in modern history, into a conversation about emotional authenticity. She didn't just survive. She constructed meaning out of suffering, and she tried, in every speech and every handshake and every unscripted moment, to show others how to do the same.
I'd like to be a queen of people's hearts, in people's hearts, but I don't see myself being queen of this country. November 1995. The Panorama interview. Diana said this quietly, without drama, and the world shifted. It was both a renunciation and a coronation. She was stepping back from the institution, acknowledging, gently but clearly, that she and the monarchy were no longer compatible. But she was also stepping forward into something far larger. She was claiming a different kind of power, not the power of crowns and palaces, the power of affection, of trust, of belonging to the people rather than to a system. And she was right. 28 years after her death, her image still appears on magazine covers around the world. Her son has spoken about her influence on his life in his own public remarks. Exhibitions about her life draw queues around the block. She remains one of the most recognized faces in human history. She got what she asked for, not a throne, something rarer. When you were happy, you can forgive a great deal. Diana wasn't naturally bitter. Despite everything, the loneliness, the betrayal, the bulimia, the isolation, the cruel headlines, the being followed by photographers every single day for 17 years, she retained a fundamental orientation toward warmth, toward softness. She forgave, not easily and not always completely, but she forgave. Because she understood that forgiveness isn't a gift to the person who wronged you. It's an act of self-liberation. It's how you stop letting the past govern the present. And she sought happiness with genuine hunger. In her final years, friends described her as lighter, more herself, traveling, laughing, in love, beginning to build a life that was finally authentically hers. She never got to finish that life, but the woman she was becoming, freer, warmer, more grounded, is visible in every quote from those final months. Hugs can do great amounts of good, especially for children. This sounds simple, and it is, and that's precisely why it mattered so much coming from her. In the 1980s, Diana held the hands of AIDS patients at a time when health workers were still wearing full protective gear out of misplaced fear. She embraced children in orphanages. She sat on the beds of the dying and held their hands and looked them in the eye. She made contact, physical, human, real contact, the centerpiece of her public work. At a time when public figures kept their distance, literally and figuratively, Diana closed the gap. She understood something deeply human. That touch is not weakness, it is medicine. That to be seen and held by another person is one of the most powerful healing forces in existence. That one instinct, to hug, to reach out, to not flinch, probably did more for public health advocacy and human dignity than 1,000 carefully worded policy documents. There's a reason Diana's words still resonate, more than a quarter century after she died. She wasn't just quotable, she was honest in a world that rewards performance. She was vulnerable in a world that punishes softness. She was present in a world that rewards distance. And she paid a price for all of it, in the glare of cameras, in the cruelty of tabloids, in the relentlessness of a public life that consumed her private one. But she also gave us a map. A map for how to live with a broken heart and still show up. How to use your own suffering as a compass pointing toward others who are suffering. How to be royal in the truest sense. Not by bloodline, but by humanity. By presence. By care. She once said, "I think the biggest disease the world suffers from is the feeling of being unloved." And her entire life was the antidote she offered. Not a cure, an antidote. The slow, daily, imperfect, beautiful work of making other people feel that they matter, that they are seen, that someone, even someone as troubled and as hunted and as flawed and as extraordinary as Diana, looked at them and thought, "You are worth crossing a room for." That's the legacy. Not the crown. Not the wedding. Not the tragedy. The crossing of rooms. The reaching out of hands. The Queen of Hearts exactly as she wanted to be,